Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Newcastle podcast. And it is indeed Tactics Tuesday. My name is Michael Grahamslaw and today I am joined once again by my two Daily Newcastle brothers-in-arms. Firstly, it's Iain Mackay. How's it going, Iain?
I just thought I'd have that in case the microphone stopped working again. I'm hoping it's working. Otherwise, I've just got hi, guys. That's all I can say. No, it's good. Microphone problems. Apart from that, everything is swimming.
Absolutely fantastic. Technical issues, hopefully all gone for the evening. But if you hadn't guessed, we're also joined by Kev and Esther. How's it going, Kev?
Hey up, I'm all good. It's a shame it's not an England episode because Iain could just write I love England on the paper and just show it up. That's what I would do. So yeah, we'll get there.
Episode done. We would have been fine. 1 minute, there we are.
I don't even need to write it out. You just have to send me one of your scripts, Kevin.
Perfect.
He does indeed love England. But good. Now, we're at that awkward stage of the season. And no, not another international break. But we are playing almost every midweek and also at the weekend. So, December, players and fans, fans love it. Players, probably not so much. But we'll look to do today a little bit of combination work for the Brentford game on Wednesday, which will be previewed in much more depth after this episode. And we'll keep that good old Tactics Tuesday feel. So the first topic I wanted to bring to our attention actually links back to a topic that was actually spoken about before the very first Tactics Tuesday. But has Newcastle's success from an attacking perspective over the last 3 games, where we've had Gordon, or Barnes, Izak, and Murphy in their natural positions, demonstrated a need to play players in their natural position rather than fit everyone in where we can? What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I think it does massively help, and I think it's hugely helped us this season. Well, we don't know yet, but we're hoping we're consistent from now and moving forward. It's like Leicester, as close as we can be anyway. I think it has had a massive help. I think Murphy does give you something extra on the right. I know it seems crazy saying that in a team where you'd expect, but I mean, 3 years ago, if somebody said Jacob Murphy was still having a positive impact on the team, you would have thought, absolutely not. No way, he'll be long gone. But he does stay wide. He does hug the touchline. It does give our midfielders a lot more space just by pulling an extra player a little bit further away from them. So definitely has its benefits. But the counter argument to that is the season when we finished 4th, we had Dan Burn left back. Which was a little bit mental because he was out of position. And then Joe Linton was left wing at times with Willock coming into the midfield. So we have had a little bit of success with players playing out of position, such as Dan Burn. I think if Tino at left back, when he first came into the team, when Trippier was just irreplaceable, Tino came in at left back and actually did quite well.
Yeah.
So I think it can work, and I think having players who are very, what's the word I'm looking for when they play different positions? Why can't I think of that
versatile.
Word? Versatile, that's it. So when you've got players who are versatile, it is a massive help, especially when you're changing tactics mid-game. But I think we went back to basics, haven't we? It looks a little bit like Newcastle, high intensity, high press. Tonali's now the 6, Bruno's now the 8, and we've got Murphy right, Gordon left. I think from Eddie Howe's point of view, the experimentation will be gone of putting Gordon on the right, because when Barnes came on, Barnes went on the right, and it was almost like, right, Gordon is now a left winger. That's not going to change anymore. Yes, if there's an injury, Joe Linton might be able to go there, but yeah, it was very nice to see, and everybody was in position, so they instantly understood what we were trying to do a lot better. Well, that's how it seemed anyway to us.
Yeah, I 100% agree. What about you, Ian? Do you agree having them in their natural positions has allowed them to shine in recent games?
I definitely think having Murphy playing on the right, who's got a right foot, who's quite quick, who can put the ball in with his right foot, has added some balance to the attack. I know we chose for half of our attacks to come down the left against Leicester, but that wasn't to say that we couldn't have gone down the right more if we'd wanted to. And I think just spreading the attack across the pitch and being able to come from both sides has made us look a far more balanced side. And perhaps that was less possible to happen, but maybe it could have happened with Gordon there because we saw that fabulous cross come in for Izak to score the header against Arsenal. But that was a bit of a one-off. I don't think Barnes goes past his man and puts a cross in. So that's Murphy's natural position, I think. Whether Almiron would have scored twice against Leicester or not, I don't know. But I do
Might
think
have with two on
having
his left foot.
the ability to go down both sides balances the attack up and means that they've got to defend the whole pitch instead of just defending one side of it. And I think that's where we're getting a lot of the joy from. It's Murphy on the Izak goal that's got the ball on the right and brings it inside and knocks it across to come down the left, but much more quickly. I think the speed that we've moved the ball has been key to how the last 3 games have gone.
Yeah, I think Michael might have inspired me, actually. He's mentioned there about playing in freedoms. I thought when I was watching the game on Saturday, I actually thought the players seem, when we're going forward, we're playing with a lot more freedom. Like, Gordon was just running at his man again, and he wasn't worried about who was behind him or what was happening there. When Murphy got the ball, he was, again, it was almost like they weren't overthinking it. When I've watched games against Brentford and West Ham and Brighton, it's almost like the players have got the ball and either had too much instruction or overthought what they were going to do with the ball or who was underlapping or overlapping or whatever. I think playing in the natural positions might have given that little bit more confidence and freedom when they get the ball to just say, I know exactly what to do now. I know exactly who's to the left of us. I know who's covering in my 6 role. I'm just going to go and I'm going to put a deep cross in. Or I'm going to cut inside. I'm going to play the overlap or I'm going to fake the overlap and come inside. So it seemed like offensively we had so much more freedom. And actually, I didn't know why that was. I didn't know if it was a change in training, but Michael might have hit the nail on the head there. It might be because they are playing in their natural positions, which inspires a lot more confidence as it is. And it did seem like a lot more freedom in the forward going plays against Leicester.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think people underestimate sort of when you're a professional footballer, you train the same drills over and over and over. And then when you switch positions, some players absolutely fantastic at it, but others really struggle to adapt. And I think England and Newcastle have had the same issue. England had it in the summer where we were playing Phil Foden out on the wing because we didn't want Jude Bellingham out of the number 10 role. And I know Jacob Murphy's had 2 assists and 2 goals in the last 2 games, but we know long term he isn't the answer. But that balance, Alexander Isak looks a completely different player. I said in the Brentford review, which we did, the Brentford crossover, the day before the Liverpool game, that we hadn't seen the best of Alexander Isak. In the last 3 games, we've seen the best. Well, and unfortunately, in the Brentford game, we saw the best and the worst within 10 minutes.
Yep.
But he looks so much more comfortable and he looks a much better player. But you know me, I love a stat. So, Alexander Isak and Jacob Murphy have started 7 games together for Newcastle this season. Southampton at home, Murphy went off substituted after 30 minutes. Wolves, Izak went off at half time. The 3-3 draw with Liverpool, and then the 4 games that I want to focus on. Bournemouth, where Murphy was albeit quite poor, but the defeats to Brighton and Brentford, and then the win against Leicester. Can either of you tell me what those last 4 games have in common in the highlight of Newcastle's season as a whole?
See the last 4 again.
The draw with
Leicester.
Bournemouth, second game of the season, Leicester win, and the defeats to Brighton and Brentford.
We had more possession.
That might be correct, but it's not the one I've got down. I don't have every stat written down.
I was going to say we all had a goal contribution, but Brighton we didn't because we didn't score. I take one more guess at it.
So when we had more than 25 shots. Is it shots?
Not shots, no. It's everyone's favourite stat.
No, XG. We had better XG than the opposition.
Our 4 highest XGs this year have come across the 7 games that Izak and Murphy have started together. Now, we've only won one of those games, but it does show that as a flowing attack, we are creating better chances, but we're not putting them away. So the other games that were up there were the 3-1 victory over Nottingham Forest and the Everton game where Murphy started, but it was Gordon in that central striker role. So if that balance is one of the things that contributes to Newcastle succeeding in the future, then maybe Jacob Murphy's the answer, or maybe in January we need to bug our ideas up and get a right winger. But that's not what we're here to talk about on a Tactics Tuesday, and we're a little bit into the episode so far, so we're going to go to our first advert, which will be brought to us by Zencastr.
It's about Zencaster, but brought to you by me, Michael. Hi.
Did
Do you
Zencastr
have
give
a
it us? Yes.
Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? Might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencaster makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, your nose, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencaster makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster.
And we are back. Beautifully done, Ian. Thank you very much. So, we've discussed balance on the right and how it could be finding that balance on the right side will suit us rather than forcing two very good players into a team at the expense of one playing out of position. Now, that's a topic that's been mentioned for a number of positions so far this season, and I wanted to bring the topic of the number 6 and the number 8 to this episode because Bruno Gimenez and Sandro Tonali, I thought, had both had very good games against Leicester. Now, Bruno had a few moments of bonkersness, let's say, but that Leicester game was the first. That Leicester game was the first Premier League game that Tonali has started this season that ended in a Newcastle win, and he was fantastic during it. So big congratulations to Sandro for what was a very impressive performance. But I noticed it felt like Tonali and Bruno had officially switched roles into what many believed they were always going to do. Tonali sat deep, had a lot more of the ball, more than I've seen him in any game for Newcastle so far. And Bruno played a little bit further forward, but had less of the ball than I would argue in most games, but in more advanced positions. And I think that worked quite well, apart from the dive. But what do you think, Ian? Do you think that's something that we should see going forward based on the evidence we saw against Leicester?
I hope it is the first of many Newcastle wins we see with Tonali playing in the 6 and Bruno playing in a more advanced position. It's odd. It's odd that they hadn't already been playing like that. However, I think it was quite telling just a few weeks ago when being quizzed on why that hadn't happened. Eddie Howe said that Bruno was one of the best number 6s in the Premier League. So I think that might have been at the manager's insistence that that Bruno has had to play a more defensive role, and that doesn't leave the space for Tonali to play where he wants to play. I'm delighted that he's. Maybe we've had a very painful journey for him to get to the point where he said, "Okay, you play number 6 and you play further up, Bruno." But they both look so much more comfortable in those positions, finding each other with some forward passes. And we can actually play a forward pass and then another forward pass fast enough to put Izak clean through in goal, for example, even if he then falls over it before he puts it past the goalkeeper. But that's what I want to see. I want to see more of these decisive forward passes, breaking the lines, getting the attackers some space to do their magic, and not this horrible repetitive side to side stuff which we seem to have lapsed into, particularly away from home. So let's get on the front foot away from home and let's see these balls moving forward quickly.
That's an excellent point. Do you agree, Kev?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think losing in football, and I'm very rare in this as a Newcastle fan, I've understood over the last 6-7 weeks, losing in football is going to happen. I think it's how you respond to losses and what you learn from losses. And I think Ian hit me nail on the head there. I think you learned that going forward, what it needs to be is Tonali needs to be the 6 regardless of whether Bruno wants to play there or whether he wants to be like Eddie Howe has made that decision of right, we're not playing well, we're not in good form, I need to change it. I think this is the best way to change it. And it happened against Liverpool, really, the first time I remember seeing it, that key tactical switch of Tonali is now the number 6. And we played very well against Liverpool. Again, we conceded 3, but you look at the goals we conceded, it was just a Mo Salah show, wasn't it? So
100%.
and if he's going on a free, I'll take him, by the way, if we do ever do a transfer. But yeah, I think Ian hit the nail on the head as well. It's now, how do we learn from our away performances this year, and how do we do it away? Do we just go with the same formula as what's kind of started, maybe hopefully working? You can tell my hesitance there to say it is working, kind of hopefully maybe working. But yeah, do we just go with the same formula? I don't think he'll revert back to Bruno as a 6 whilst Tonali's in the team anymore. I don't think that will happen. But if Tonali's out or injured or not fit, then it might be Bruno back in there with Longstaff coming in or something like that. But yeah, I'm actually intrigued for the Ipswich game. I'm really, really intrigued to see how we do it away from home.
Yeah.
But I couldn't call it. I really couldn't call how we do respond away from home. But I absolutely think it's worked, and I think it is the way forward now. And I think, like Ian said again, the painful journey to get there. But Eddie Howe's clearly adapted. He's learned a lot from it. And again, that's why I think he's the best manager we could possibly have, because he is going to make mistakes. And when he makes them, he learns from them.
Yeah, I do have to say, one of the things that I've noticed from how this year, in particular 2024 as a whole, not just this season, is that some of the things we criticised him on very early, for example, not making substitutes early in the game, he has changed and he has learnt from. So it shows that
we've got the most goals from substitutes in 2024.
I did not know that. Mr. Statman,
Yeah.
take my title. Take my title.
Well, I saw it on Facebook as I was leaving work.
Traitor.
So it might not be true, but I'm pretty confident it is, because I know last season we had the most goals from subs. And I know up until
we're up there.
The start of this season, about 3 games ago, because Barnes was coming off the bench and scoring a lot, we had the most goals from subs again. So yeah, I think we're definitely up there in 2024.
Yeah, so the official source is trust me, but it does seem that it makes sense. So we're going to go with it. But it does have to be said that this might be the best possible point in the season to say, right, this is what we're going to stick with. Bruno, you're going to sit forward. But I do have to say, and this might just be me being negative, but if Bruno keeps getting into more advanced positions, he needs to cut out the stupid moments. I remember the red card against Southampton, I think 2 seasons ago, where literally we're 2 or 1-0 up late in the game. Stupid red card out of frustration on the edge of the opposition box. And you saw it against Leicester. We were cruising against Leicester, and then I know it was only 1-0, but he decides to dive. And what I'm going to say at that is he is one of the most passionate players I've ever seen. And he looked distraught after the game against Brentford. So put it down to desperation to make something happen in a bad spell and leave it there. But I do think he's got the potential to be an absolutely fantastic number 8 for Newcastle. But what do you both think? Ian, are you confident Bruno's going to shine in that advanced position?
Yeah. I think that's his position. I mean, he's got such an eye for a pass, hasn't he? We remember
fantastic.
The little first time round the corner balls that got Miggy in 3 or 4 times 2 seasons ago. He's got a great eye for a pass. Now, one thing you might not have spotted, because it won't change for the Brentford match, but at Ipswich, Joe Linton's suspended, I think, so that midfield is going to have to change. Kind of hoping if Willock is still carrying something, because I think he's the obvious replacement. But if Willock's still carrying something, it might be a game that we could bring Lewis Miley into, because I really like to see him. And I think with a pair of them playing in front of Tonali, we might just have way too much in midfield and picking out the runs of the fast boys going in behind.
Yeah.
But I'm not Eddie Howe.
I think it's interesting that... Yes, you should. Well, actually, points-wise, I'm not sure, but definitely for the sake of this podcast, you should. But it's interesting that Lewis Miley's played tonight for the under-21s, because I would have thought that he would have been one of the names that's pushing for a start midweek against Brentford, where there may be changes, and I think it's a brilliant game to give Miley his first start back, because the likes of Bruno and Tonali, they are going to need a break. Tonali's, he gets treated like he can only do 60 minutes sometimes. And, he has been out for a long time, so I can't see the reason for that. But, it would have been nice to see Lewis Miley, get a start tomorrow. But
I think, Michael, unusually, and you know why it's important for us, I think the Carabao Cup quarter-final is an even more important game than the Premier League match for us this season. I think Eddie's got to get us into the final and win a trophy. That's top of his list. And we're really, really close with a home game against Brentford and then one opponent to beat home and away. So I think that might be why Miley could play. I'm sure we'll see him on Saturday when we play at Ipswich.
it's an excellent point, and it blends fantastically into what we're going to be talking about in part 3. So, I am sorry, Kev, I'm not going to go to you with that last question, but instead, we are going to go to an advert from the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Yeah, and just before I do it, I've double-checked what I just said, and it is true. Last season was 14, and this season is 2, but we're still top over the last 2 seasons. Anyway. This podcast is part of a Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts the fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. And I do have to apologise for those watching on video. I stretched my leg out, cramped it, and as soon as Kev started doing the advert, I started going. So anyone who's watching on video, I am deeply, deeply sorry. But for those of you listening,
it was a retro advert.
Yes, let's say that.
Yeah.
I just hate retro adverts. But for those listening on Spotify, nothing changed, and we are back. Now, as we mentioned, on Wednesday night, Newcastle United face Brentford, and on Saturday, Newcastle face Ipswich Town, which both of them feel like must-win games at this stage of the season where everything is so tight. But if we look at it, because we could keep pressure on the teams above us with a win on Ipswich, theoretically, this time next week, Newcastle could, and it's very unlikely, I'm not trying to be cocky, but Newcastle could sit in 6th position in the Premier League and be in the EFL Cup semi-finals.
I said that a week ago.
I didn't listen. Now, so I raised the question, do we risk playing the same 11 in all 3 games? Because we seem to have found our best 11. Or do we rotate some of the squad against Brentford or Ipswich? Now, Ian, you've said that potentially Brentford is more important than Ipswich. And to be honest, with the possibility of winning a cup, I am inclined to agree. But what about you, Kev? Do you agree?
Oh, that's a great question. It's tough because a win against Ipswich could really put you in a nice position going. Kind of started the busy Christmas period, but it puts you in a nice position going into Boxing Day and then the game before New Year's and all. Oh my goodness. I think Brentford is probably more important just because it's a cup, and oh my God, are we starved of cups. You look at our TikTok and when we're talking about Newcastle fans and all that stuff, people give us so much. Because what have you won in the last 50, 60 years? And we've got nothing to say back. We haven't won anything. Actually, we won the Intertoto Cup and the Masella Cup, so actually we are quite successful. But no, I think the Brentford game is just a bit more important. But I think, I actually think both of these next 2 games are absolutely huge because, just like you said there, Michael, and I called it jokingly actually when I said, well, in 2 weeks' time, because everyone was being really negative. I can't remember what game it was. We just lost to whoever it was. I wiped it from my mind. That's the type of person I am. Never remember when we lose, but I remember when we win. But I was kind of sat there thinking, look, like in 2 weeks' time, we could be in the semi-final of a cup and sat anywhere between, I think I said anywhere between 9th and 5th. And that's exactly where we are. So I think it'll be huge for the fan base if we win the next 2. And I think it'll be massive for the players because it just shows what a couple of couple of goals did that second goal against Leicester early in the second half give them so much confidence. When all of a sudden I'm seeing Sandro flick the ball over people's heads, I'm seeing Bruno drop a shoulder in the midfield again, I'm seeing Lewis Hall bombing on, Trippier came on and stuck wide, and Fabian Schär was going across the right back to play them big diagonals, and I thought, wow, it's amazing what a little bit of confidence does, and the players are all of a sudden back in that muscle memory. But again, I think tactically, just a very quick mention, when Trippier did come on, he stayed that high and wide, but Shaw was going across to almost right back, and it gives him so much more potential for them long crossfield balls we love to see. So as much as I thought everybody played well against Leicester, tactically, if I was going to make one change, I'd still bring Trippier in, because I think it gives you a lot, especially if you're putting more crosses in the box, and Murphy's hugging the touchline and Trippier's hugging the touchline. All of a sudden, your central players, who, let's face it, are our most influential players, are going to get more of a say. So that's a tactical change I would make for Brentford. And then I would probably try and go with a full best 11 again against Ipswich. I know you're worried about burnout, or I would be worried about burnout and injury all of a sudden, but if you can get through the next 2 games, momentum almost takes you through the next 3 after that, I think.
Yeah, you 100% might be right.
I think that was what I noticed against Leicester, though. I think, he made some very early substitutions because the game was already way beyond Leicester. So some of our big players came off after an hour. And I think that's so that they can do at least 75 minutes in each of those games without there being any ill effect. Let's be honest, if we get to Ipswich, haven't got through to the semi-final, and they can give you 75 minutes, it doesn't matter how much they've run themselves into the ground in that match, because there's another week to recover before they have to play again on Boxing Day. So I think he'll be playing his strongest 11 in each of those games that he can get out. As I say, he's got one choice to make on the Ipswich game because Joe Linton is suspended for that.
I think he'll play Longstaff.
We'll just have to see. It probably will be. I'd like to see Miley start getting some minutes. But if we can go 2 or 3 up against Brentford, you might see that Asula will get a half or 40 minutes, because I think he showed a willing runner and the strength to be able to cope against Premier League opposition when he came on against Leicester.
Yeah, he played quite well.
And I don't know where Sven Botman's recovery fits in. Is he going to end up
playing
being
tonight?
Back on
He's
Boxing
playing
Day?
tonight for the under-23s at Whitley Park.
But I mean, will he be match fit enough to get a game against Villa, do you think, or are we waiting into the new year? Is he coming back against
I think
Bromley?
we'll wait until the new year. He likes to wait, doesn't he? He likes to sort of build players back in. And it didn't work with Wilson, but it's worked with a number of others.
We could see him off the bench against Villa, maybe like 10 minutes if you're winning and there's not a massive amount of pressure on the back line and you maybe 2 or 3 up, you might give him 10, 15 minutes just to get a bit of rustiness off. But yeah.
That's exactly what I mean. And these next 2 games, if we can get to a point like we were at 3 up after 50 minutes against Leicester, if we can be that much in control of a match, he could start bringing the big players off. And if he brings someone like Botman in to cover the last 20 minutes, for example, then rusty or not, you'd hope that would be enough to see the game out.
Yeah, I think I'd expect to see over the course of the 2 games, maybe Trippier, Kelly, Longstaff and Barnes all to get sort of over, let's say, 80 minutes in the legs between both games. I think he will offer that rotation, but I think it'll probably be across both games. So let's say the 6 changes across both games. It'll sort of be 3 in each game just to sort of even it out, just to try and maintain. Yeah, Willock as well, although I'm not sure if he's fully available or not. He came off the bench, didn't he, actually, against Leicester?
Bench, yeah. He got wiped out in the last minute, but he looked kind of okay.
You see Howe's face as soon as it happened, just head and hands,
I was like,
have you done?
Quarter-final coming up and the bloke's flying in like that. I don't know how would have kept his cool. He did get back up, man, but when the full-time whistle ended, I was looking and he kind of went back down, but when he got back up and seemed to be okay, and I was like, oh God, surely not.
Yeah. Knowing our luck, that's him out for another 4 weeks or something like that. But he's not quite Callum Wilson, so we'll keep the faith. Although his injury record is probably worse than Cal's over the last few years, but we'll stay positive.
We love
and
you,
with
Callum.
that, I'm going to finish on one last question for you both. So if somebody said to you at the start of the season, going into Christmas, we'd be in 8th place, touching distance of the top 4, and in the semi-final of an EAFL Cup, would you have been happy? What do you think, Kev?
I think the 8th place, I'd be a little bit disappointed at. If I would probably ask for more detail, but like, how close are we to the top 6? And if
In
it said
touching
like,
distance.
if it said like 1.2 points, I'd be like, well, yeah, I am, because it's a cup. Come on, Eddie. This is why I love Eddie and this group of players. They talk about it all the time. Gordon talked about it recently, what it would mean to bring a cup to Newcastle. Eddie Howe talks about it every season. It seems like he wants to win a cup, and he's not done until he wins one. So look, I love how open these players and this manager is about trying to win a cup for us, and I applaud that. So yeah, I think I would be happy. I would have took that at the start of the season. However, it helps knowing the extra information of how good Bournemouth have been, how good Brighton have been, how good them teams have been consistently. I still think we'll fall off, and I don't think we will, or at least I hope we don't. But I still think the likes of Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest will fall behind eventually. It's just almost kind of a little bit of arrogance from me, but yeah, I would have took it.
It's difficult to keep it up for a full season, as we know. But how about you, Ian? Does positivity prevail on this day? Would you be happy?
I'm positive now. Yeah, I'll be more positive if we've beaten Leicester, if we've beaten Ipswich, and beaten Brentford, definitely. There's a little part of me that just looks back at some of those games where we've thrown points away at Brighton and West Ham and Everton.
The Gordon penalty against Everton. God, 2 points extra.
If we got those points, we probably would be up with Chelsea being Liverpool's closest chasers. And that's kind of where I was hoping we were going to be at the start of the season. But hey, it might just be slightly delayed because this is such a topsy-turvy league that if it's our turn now to put a run of games together, and let's face it, we should be beating Villa at home because we always do, and then a very dodgy-looking Man U away from home, and then Tottenham as well. I mean, come on, This is where look. Eddie always puts a run of 5 or 6 straight wins together in October, November, December. It's just a bit late this year. That's all. Let's see where we are at Easter, mate.
That is what we needed. Absolutely fantastic. And on that note, I'm going to end the podcast for today. So that is all for today's Daily Newcastle podcast. I've been Michael. I've been joined by Ian and Kev. Thank you all for listening. And be sure to check in tomorrow for a full preview of the Brentford game.
Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.